Um, just give me 1 second. I'll be right back. Okay. He should be unmuted soon. Once that happens, he'll call the roll for attendance. To Ambassador Richards, my request would be that you note the record of attendance either in Senate chamber or in Senate voting, and any motions that pass or anything like that, that you again make note of that in Senate voting. But other than that, that should be good for now. We'll talk more privately about some things that I'd like to see from the clerk's office in the coming days. I see you lighting up, but we cannot hear you. Can you hear us, John?
Yeah, I can hear you guys.
Okay, there you are. Were you able to get access to that reference document?
Yes, I was.
All right. The clerk will now call the roll.
I'll begin by calling the roll. Alrighty, I will now proceed to call the roll. Senator Farrakhan. Senator Farrakhan, unaccounted for, not present.
That must be an old document because he does not go by Farrakhan anymore. It should be reference doc 11th Congress. I can put the link in the chat.
Oh. Alrighty, it's updated. Alrighty, I'll proceed to call the roll now. Senator Farrakhan, Senator Goldwater. Senator Goldwater absent. Vacant senator. Senator Scott.
Present.
Senator present. Senator Hawthorne.
Present.
Senator Hawthorne present. Senator Jones. Senator Jones unaccounted for. Senator Abdullah. Senator Abdullah is present. Senator Sturgis. Senator Sturgis is not present. Senator Sanders. I see him in the voice call. I don't think he can. I think he's has his volume off, but I'll count him as present anyways. Mr. President, the attendance has been counted and roll has been. All senators have been called. We currently have 6 out of 8 senators here tonight with us.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. With that being said, I wanted to first start with Senator Abdullah, who sent a speech. He cannot speak at this time, but I will read on his behalf regarding the situation in Israel. He says, quote, "Greetings. I, as a Muslim, am at great interest in this situation, but for America and for the sake of our strength as a nation, I cannot in good conscience stand with Palestine, so I stand with Israel. Once we stand with Israel, we stand with America, folks. Once we stand with Israel, we stand with Superior and all of the American people. Israel has been there for us. We should be there for them, period." So that is the remarks from Senator Abdullah. If any other senator wishes to seek recognition, they may speak up now. The gentleman from Florida is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise today to declare my community's unshakable support for the state of Israel. Israel has been under constant fire for over a week by Hamas, which is a terrorist organization supported by Iran. Over 3,100 rockets have been fired, 10 Israelis have been killed, and millions more would be at risk if not for the Iron Dome missile defense system protecting its citizens. Make no mistake, Hamas is not interested in peace. Their goal is to destroy the Jewish state of Israel. Hamas uses children as human shields and pays the terrorist families for life. Hamas launches the attacks, but tries to paint Israel as the aggressor. And at the same time, cynics or opportunists are taking advantage of this violent wave of terrorism to peddle anti-Semitic hate. But I am proud to stand with Israel, the only democratic country in the Middle East, its right to defend itself. Thank you, and I yield back.
Thank you, Senator Cawthorn. Before we proceed, I want to first welcome our newly appointed colleague who I think was appointed not even 5 minutes ago and now sworn in. Welcome back, I should say, Senator Williams. We look forward to working with you. And since we have 2 new senators, that means a committee reshuffle will happen. That process will start after this session, bearing in mind that there are 8 senators and there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. 10 to 15. No, I'm going to count exactly. 3, 6, 9. Okay, 12 committees. So you can only get so many spots. I believe each senator is entitled to 1 to 2 chairman spots and so on and so forth. I'll get the exact number after the session. But if you have any preference as to which committee you'd like, or committees, I should say, you'd like to serve on, please shoot me a PM and I will consider that. Now back to the topic at hand with the Israeli event. If any senator would like to seek recognition, you may now request. The senator for New Hampshire? Senator from New Hampshire is recognized for 5 minutes. I thank you for the question, and I'm sure you're not the only one thinking that. I know that Mr. Cawthorn is not able to speak right now, but he still wanted to speak about the events. He found a video where his profile picture, Maria Vera Salazar, was speaking about Israel. Not quite the right context, but I guess it is kind of related. And that was his remarks. I would ask that senators refrain from doing that unless you cannot physically speak, like Mr. Cawthorn was unable to speak at this time. So In rare circumstances, yes, but more often than not, if you could send written remarks if you're unable to speak, that would be preferable. Yeah, yeah. Thank you, Senator Sanders. With that said, is there any other senator that wishes to speak on this topic of Israel, not Senator Cawthorn's speaking capabilities? Okay. Um, if no one wants to speak on the topic of Israel, um, then we can open up the floor to additional topics if anyone wants to speak on any topic or send remarks on any given topic, and I would be happy to read those aloud if you are unable to speak. Or, um, yeah, that's about it if nobody else wants to speak on Israel. Senator Sanders is recognized for 5 minutes. I don't want to act like a press secretary because I'm not, but I am uh, in contact with the administration a bit. I know, I know. I just wanted to preface that. Yeah. I know, and I can only speak from the president's statement that their priority is Israel, as is mine, and I think that is an opinion shared by most, if not every senator. Um, and to just get a solution peacefully, with Israel at the bargaining table, to make sure that every side can get what they want. I know administrations in the past have tried to do that. It's a difficult task, but and I haven't spoken the last few hours. Yeah, I'm talking about from the U.S. standpoint that we don't want to get involved if we don't have to, militarily. All I would say is that I think that's a better question for the Secretary of State, the president, and everyone that's involved in that team. I know Senator Cawthorn is on there, along with a few other members of the administration. Um, also, okay. First, I want to start with, and this is something I'd planned to say, but um, and I have a great respect for the administrative team, but I do have one criticism in the fact that we got really no lead up to this event at all. It just happened out of nowhere, and it was like, oh, Israel has the West Bank. Like that. There was no Israel is aiming to, or this is what's happening. It just immediate. So I think had we go ahead. What I was just saying though is if you look back on every single event post, there isn't barely any mention of Israel. And then today at 11:30 in the morning, it just drops. All I'm saying is I'm not saying it like out of where they just picked a spot on the map. I apologize if that's what came across. My issue is not with the realistic aspect of it, but just from an administrative standpoint. Um, but the floor is yours. Thank you. There was a motion presented by Senator Abdullah, and I apologize for not being more forceful in presenting this. When you sent it, I didn't see it the second it got sent, but the motion is to put the following. I'm reading this direct quote. Motion to put the following to codify, insert the following into the Senate record and library. Quote, Israel has successfully prevented victories by radical nationalist movements in Lebanon and Jordan, as well as in Palestine. Israel's Air Force is predominant throughout the region, and it has cooperated with the U.S. military-industrial complex with research and development for new jet fighters and anti-missile defense systems. Israel has been there for America, and we have been there for them, and that Israel is a great ally for the United States. End quote. Is there a sufficient second to put the following, to put that that paragraph, or however you want to call it, into the Senate record and library?
I second.
I object, Mr. President.
Please state your objection.
Thank you. So the purpose of my objection is not, again, to show any sort of anti-Israel sentiment, and anyone who would try to paint it as that way, I think would be lying. But what I don't understand the point of a resolution which codifies a relationship which has already been codified by $5 billion a year in a economic relationship with a state that has a great social. It's not a first world, not a third world country. I mean, this is a first world state in which, even without our dollars, they could do a pretty good job at defending themselves. Not saying we should get rid of our dollars. In fact, I think we should increase funding towards the Iron Dome and stuff. But those are policies. This is not. This is these are words which does nothing to address the solution. I mean, I think Israel knows that the United States is one of its closest allies. There's not a single member in the United States Senate who is talking about the nation which they have annexed or has even said their name, because I think we all know and believe that this isn't the country that it once was, and Israel has a right to defend itself. However, standing up to pass motions which do nothing substantively to address this issue, and only add on to what is already a strong and healthy and vibrant relationship between Israel, I don't think is necessary whatsoever.
Okay. Thank you, Senator Sanders. Your objection is noted. Mr. Abdullah sent a response that he'd like me to read aloud. Quote, I find Mr. Sanders' tone to be condescending, and I find it strange he's thrown shade at Senator Cawthorn. The reason I want it codified is to recognize that we are allies. For example, a certain someone denounced Israel today. We need to codify it, recognize it, and stand by it.
If I may respond.
You may respond. 5 minutes.
First of all, Senator Cawthorn, I mean, what do you think I've thrown shade at you? I apologize. I mean, what instance is he talking about? I'd love to. It's on live stream, so I think we'll be able to go back on it if it's there. But I don't know who. Saying that one person in the country has condemned Israel, therefore we should pass a resolution which adds on to a relationship which has already been codified by endless pieces of legislation, treaties, and other negotiations, is just redundant. It's redundant legislating. That's not necessarily condescending to say. It is just simply redundant to pass a resolution codifying a relationship which has already been codified. And again, Senator Cawthorn, if you have taken any shade from me, it's that doesn't actually exist. That shade was not there. I don't know what Senator Abdullah was talking about.
with that said, the motion is seconded. We will proceed to a roll call vote on codifying Mr. Abdullah's paragraph into the Senate record and library. If the clerk would now call the roll. And also, I just wanted to note that there is a roll call section on the second page of the reference doc, aside from the sitting senators section.
The clerk will now proceed to call the roll on the motion to apologies. We will now move to vote on a roll call to codify. I'll begin the roll call. The senior senator of Superior, Robert Abdullah. Mr. Abdullah votes aye. The senior senator of Shoshone, Jacob Goldwater. Mr. Goldwater absent. The junior senator from Superior, Mr. Jones. Mr. Jones absent. Mr. Sanders. The senior senator of Cambridge, Mr. Sanders. I'll count it as not present. Mr. Scott of New Columbia.
Aye.
Mr. Scott votes aye. Mr. Michael Sturgis of Cambridge. Not present. Mr. Alexander Williams of Shoshone.
Aye.
Mr. Alexander Williams votes in the affirmative. So it stands that Mr. Abdullah, Mr. Scott, and Mr. Williams are in favor of the affirmative. Okay, well, you didn't answer.
Negative.
It stands. The vote stands. Mr. Abdullah, affirmative. Mr. Goldwater, absent. Mr. Jones, absent. Mr. Sanders votes in the negative. Mr. Scott votes in the affirmative. Mr. Sturgis is absent. And Mr. Williams votes in the affirmative. The vote stands at 3 to 1 to 4, Mr. President.
The motion passes. If there is,
Mr. President.
yes.
So just for the sake of making sure that we don't pass
Mr. Cawthorn votes aye. Apologies.
For the sake of
It's now 4 to 1 to 3.
making sure we don't support or don't pass only a redundant resolution, I would like to introduce to the Senate floor a resolution to officially recommend more of an, and I welcome more recommendations for the president in this resolution, but I would like to motion to officially recommend and send a recommendation to the president to increase funding for the Iron Dome by $500 billion, or sorry, $500 million, excuse me. The reasoning behind that being, of course, clearly that Israel has taken the first strike here, but as we stand with Israel and as we stand with their defense, we understand that Iran is right around the corner and always looking right at Israel, just waiting for the day where they can take over that country. And other Arab national groups are doing the same right across the border. Israel would need this funding. Israel would continue to need this funding. And an increase to the funding that we already give them allows them to strengthen that dome and make sure that its capabilities are even better than right now, which are pretty great. Again, I welcome more recommendations for the president, but this is, I think, one of the most important recommendations that we can give in the defense of Israel, and would really reaffirm our support for Israel as a nation.
Thank you, Senator Sanders. Is there a sufficient second?
I second.
There is a sufficient second. Without objection, we will move to a roll call vote unless anyone has anything they'd like to say about the legislation or the motion, that is. All right. The clerk will now call the roll on the passage of Mr. Sanders's increase of funding to the Iron Dome.
Mr. President,
Or recommendation.
Mr. President, motion to move forward without objection.
Without objection, it is so ordered. The clerk will now call the roll.
Oh, I meant
The clerk will now call the
Pass. Okay. Without objection, the motion is agreed to.
thank you, Mr. President, and thank you to the United States Senate. Israel very much so appreciates that, and so does APAC. Let me just say, APAC very much so appreciates it.
Mr. Abdullah has another motion, and I believe after that, I'm sure many of us don't want this to be dragged on too long with just motion firing, and we'll reevaluate after this motion.
And the
Mr.
longer this
Abdullah's
goes on,
motion is to send a resolution to the president to have a dignified memorial of the LA fetal burial scandal. Does anyone have anything to say about this? And is there a second? I'm sorry, is a
President.
sufficient second?
point of personal privilege. What can I get some clarification on this, Senator Abdullah? I don't really know what this is.
I don't either, so I'm looking it up now. If Senator Abdullah does not mind, I would like to, or without objection, I will now quote Wikipedia. The Los Angeles fetus disposal scandal was the 1982 discovery of over 16,000 aborted fetuses being improperly stored at Malvin Weisberg's Woodland Hills, California home, and the ensuing legal battle regarding their disposal. Then President Ronald Reagan referred to it as a, quote, national tragedy. It inspired a song, and the fetuses were finally buried in 1985, with no criminal charges being filed against any of the parties involved.
Mr. President, just to continue my purpose, I appreciate the motion brought by Senator Abdullah, but I agree that we should probably move forward and get this Senate session over with, and I don't want to open up a debate about abortion or an abortion memorial, nor do I want to take away from the importance of the two resolutions that we had put up before. I urge my fellow colleagues to vote present on this motion so that we don't distract from the topic of the day, which is Israel, and we can work on a memorial to children on any day, I think. But Israel needs our attention right now.
If I could, I'm going to recognize myself for 5 minutes. I doubt I will use 2 minutes of them. But while I do sympathize with the scandal that was brought up by Senator Abdullah in his motion, I don't believe that it's the duty of the federal government to hold a memorial. I'm sure that, and considering that it's been around almost 40 years since this happened, I'm sure that the families have had, and people in the area have had numerous memorials and such. I'm not trying to discount the pain brought by, by the victims of this, by the families of the victim, whatever, the people that were affected by this. That's not my goal at all, but I do think there are bigger things that we need to focus on, and I do not believe that it is the duty of the federal government to hold a memorial for something that happened over 40 years ago. Again, not to discount the pain and the just the general tragedy there, but I believe that there are bigger things that need to be discussed, and I say that with the utmost respect to Senator Abdullah, and I know that he greatly respects life, and I know this is a sensitive topic for him, and not right now, and I don't think it's the number one priority that needs to be had right now. But with that said, I will yield back. And if any senator would like to speak on this topic, they may.
Mr. President, point of order. Has there been a sufficient second to this motion?
I don't believe there has.
The record shows that no sufficient second was given to the
So-
motion.
I believe that enough time
If
has been
there is
given. I believe enough time has been given. So with that, Mr. President, I motion to move on to the next order of business.
Without objection. All right.
Mr. President, motion to end the Senate session.
Gladly second. Without objection,
Gavel, gavel.
we are adjourned. Goodbye.
Jesus Christ.